literature and what is not literature within the digital space. How does digital literature challenge literary criticism in the 21st century? Now, digital literature challenges literary criticism in the 21st century in the sense that we can no longer practice criticism the way it was done in the 80s and in the 20s. Criticism now pay attention to what Catherine Hales called media-specific analysis, the combination of media elements and literary theory in accounting for cognitive experience and creative literatures that are produced in the digital space. So that if you are to account for digital literature, you must have certain technological understanding, and you must also be willing to move from your discipline of studying of literature to ask what goes in the concept of cinematography, what goes in the concept of pictography, what goes into the concept of programming, so that to a certain extent, doing criticism in the 21st century requires certain bending, certain collaboration across discipline, both in arts and in sciences. The effect of patronizing criticism on the digital space. Now, in the 21st century, in spaces like Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, etc., we have what is called patronizing criticism, which is the use of likes, emojis, etc. Now, such criticisms doesn't affect our literature. It doesn't lead to effective development of our literature in the sense that we are becoming passive in the interrogation of our literature. So I'm soliciting for us to see where we can actually account for the development of our writers in terms of providing real criticism if they have really achieved the aesthetic experience within that space, or if their art has actually achieved what it set out to achieve. Digital literary aesthetics and criticism. Digital literary aesthetics emphasize the need to pay attention to digital interface that imposes certain beauty to the digital literature. What that means is that in the criticism of literatures that are produced in the digital space in the 21st century, digital interface in terms of programming language, in terms of interactive fiction, etc., must be accounted for. For those literatures that are produced on the social media space, such elements that has to do with, for instance, IG has a different features, Twitter has a different features, etc. For us to be able to account for literatures that are produced on that space, we must understand how this technological space, these technological apps function, and we must also pay attention to the changes that these technological apps are making each day. Thank you. Okay, constraining and expounding Nigeria's literary criticism in the 21st century. Digital literature is actually constraining in the sense that you should understand that the teaching of knowledge in the university, the teaching of literature is based on certain structures. The generation of Achebe and Wole Soyinka have fought a good battle in terms of insisting that oral literature is a form of literature, and that what Achebe did was a definition of what African literature represents. However, telling them that what is done in social media to a certain extent represent a text is another battle to be fought by netizens, by my generation, for them to be included in the mainstream study of literature in departments of English across Nigeria and in West Africa. So it's more or less the study of digital literature restrain those who are not acquainted with the use of technological tools and with the effect that social media is having on our literature in terms of multiple authorship, as is represented in not too long of NSAS, Not All SARS, Me Too, etc. within that space, and Olorin. In conclusion, this paper emphasized the need for a synergy in the criticism of Nigerian digital literature. It observed that it would be disservice to our humanity to continue critiquing literature based on the binary of print and oral. In that, ignoring the influence of the interface of technology on our literature is ignoring the future, and it prevents us from producing global competitive graduates who would not only be able to critically engage the past, but make a case for the future. Thank you.
Should also clap. We should clap for him again for keeping to time. Thank you. We should also follow the trend that we adopted in the morning. We note down our questions, then after all presenters, we take questions. So we have Macham, am I correct? Mangut is presenting on archaeology in Nigeria in the digital age. So you have 20 minutes.
Thank you. Well, let me start while it's ready. Okay. For those having difficulty pronouncing my name, the name is Macham Mangut. Macham Mangut. Yes, I teach at the Department of Archaeology and Heritage Studies, University of Jos. Now, thank you. Let's go to the introduction. Yes, digital technologies are electronic tools, systems, devices, and resources that generate, store, process data. Well-known examples of digital technologies or tools include the social media, online games, multimedia, and mobile phones. There are so many of them. Now, the use of these resources or technologies have transformed archaeology, just the way it has transformed many disciplines. Now, in archaeology, it is normally when we talk of digital technologies, the first thing that comes to mind is, state-of-the-art equipment, very expensive devices to use. But from this presentation, we can see that it ranges from very simple resources like the use of spreadsheet, basic photos, videos, mobile phones, cameras, and so many of them. And in archaeology that really deals with visuals, is very important to have this to make any sense. Now, the relationship, archaeologists and information and communication technology and digital technology has had an impact on the practice of archaeology. That is how the discipline is perceived. Now, what are the objectives of this presentation? One, it aims at identifying the various digital technologies relevant in archaeology, to evaluate how archaeology is practiced in the global north vis-a-vis as it is practiced in Nigeria, and profile solutions aimed at closing the gap between Nigerian archaeologists and their counterparts in advanced countries. Now, in carrying out archaeological research, I'm going to do my discussion will be based on data collection, analysis, and then sharing or dissemination of archaeological findings or knowledge. Now, for data collection, it involves sketches, producing maps, plans, inventories of finds and features, stratigraphy, photographs and videos, etc. Due to the destructive nature of archaeological investigation, not just documentation, but also preservation of archaeological data is very important. This is where the development of databases for recording becomes relevant. It is commonly said in archaeology that excavation is destruction. The reason why we say that is because any area that you excavate, if it's not properly recorded, any information lost is lost forever. That's why it is important to use the best resources available to make sure you record as much information as possible, so that even if you don't get to use that information, other researchers will have access to it and they can now study it and come up with new information. Now, in doing that, I'm going into the GIS particularly because archaeology, before you can even talk of excavation, you have to do what we call archaeological survey. That's, you have to go out to the field to identify evidence of past human occupation, because we deal with material evidence, and you have to go out to the field to identify it. And in doing so, there is need for proper documentation, and this is where GIS comes in when you talk mapping. And in doing GIS mapping, a very important device to use is a GPS in order to identify locations. So, and apart from that, that GPS gets raw data as coordinates, longitude and latitude, but there are other ways I could get GIS data. Maybe they are already data that have been processed and are made available online that I can have access to them. So that's, we have DEMs, that's digital elevation models. We have hard copy maps. You can go and get hard copy maps from the library and now digitize it to use. We also have remote sensing and aerial photographs. These are some of the ways you can acquire GIS data. Now, geospatial information technology and GIS have revolutionized archaeology in several ways. Now, there are several mapping softwares that we use for mapping. Amongst them are ArcGIS, which is produced by Esri. We have QGIS. We have Google Earth, which is basic. We have AutoCAD, and there are so many other mapping devices. However, the major challenge is that except for QGIS, which is open source, the rest you need to actually subscribe for them. And for ArcGIS, you need thousands of dollars to have access to it. So it becomes a problem, especially in Nigeria, whereby we have a major issue with funding. So it becomes a problem, but thanks for QGIS that is open source, I could go there and do your basic mapping. And after now you've done your survey, you've identified the site, now you want to look for possible places that you could now dig to get evidence that is beneath the ground. That's where excavation comes in. And before you do excavation, there's what you do. You do survey, more of surveying. You survey the place to create a grid. Then you select where to excavate. And there are important devices that you need to use. Now, the one of which is total station. Now, the relevance of total station and 3D laser scanning in excavations cannot be overemphasized, especially if there are provisions for real-time recording. You know, having the total station is one thing, then having real-time recording software is equally important, because as you are excavating, you have your system connected to this total station, you'll be able to see what you are doing, so that if there's need for any adjustments, you can adjust while you are on field. Let it not be that after you've done your survey, you've acquired your data, you go back to work on it, you realize that you've missed some important data. So real-time data recording is very important. Now, as I said, it gives room for more informed decisions being made during excavation or recording of sites, features, and as well for reflective, interpretive analysis to be accessed during recording process. Now, from the images on the screen, the first here is the surveyor using the total station. Then the next images are surveyors using digital scanner laser to scan the site, so that they'll be able to produce 3D, they will be able to acquire 3D data to do for 3D analysis. Now, these are very important, and I'm discussing this side by side the challenges we are encountering here in Nigeria as archaeologists. For the total station, if you want to get it in Nigeria, I think the least you can get is around 1.8 million to 2 million naira. So most departments of archaeology in Nigeria is only one, which is Ahmadu Bello University, that has a total station, and I don't think it's even in use right now, because for you to operate the total station, you need a specialist to do that. So we are now relying on the traditional survey equipment, which is an automatic level or the double level, to carry out a survey to get elevation data, which is consuming time cumbersome, and it takes time, it's not fast, and it's not as accurate as when you're using total station. Now, in processing your data, also, you use GIS also in modeling real-world processes with the aim to stimulating and gaining insight into human-environment interaction. Now, you can see from these images here, the first one is a GIS model that was used to model a site. You can see it's clear here. This is an excavation going on, and there are sketches around it to describe what you are doing properly. And here, this is a scanning 3D scanner laser that has scanned a site and is giving you an outline of how it is. This is clearer, and it's a better way to analyze your data. From this, you'll be able to arrive at credible conclusions. Now, there are other images like the next one, please, the next slide. This is the first one here. It's a 3D model of Pompeii in Italy. It's a very popular archaeological site. You can see how the view is from here. You'll be able to get a lot of information about the ancient sites there. And here is GIS analysis, whereby you are now trying to analyze your site using several parameters. Several parameters like you talk of, for example, road networks, natural, environmental features. Then you talk of cultural features. There's a way you will be able to break your site into different parts for you to understand better or to interpret the part better. This is very important. Now, and digital technology has gone beyond gather data and analyzing or running models into publishing too, because your research is useless if it does not get to an audience. It becomes useless. And with digital technologies right now, you can easily go online to look for materials. However, the major problem now is restricted access. For this in published works, you may have to subscribe to it and all that. It becomes difficult. And there's another major problem with archaeology. Most times, especially in Nigeria, is as if we are communicating to ourselves. The public don't seem to know what's going on. Most times when I'm discussing with people, when I tell them I'm an archaeologist, they'll say, "You mean we have archaeologists in Nigeria?" So a good way to bridge that gap between professionals and the public is now to make our findings available on the multimedia, so that we can share it. People will get to know that something is happening, and they'll appreciate us better. And even the government, by the time they see the impact you are making, they want to, they will be interested in funding projects and talk of the equipment that we lack, that they'll be able to provide. So these are some of the ways you apply it. Also, yes, and so these are some of the platforms where you can, please, next slide, you can publish them. Now we on History Channel, you watch a lot of archaeology related movies, and National Geography, you see documentaries. Now as researchers, we can publish our findings on YouTube, we can share it on Facebook to make what we are doing known. Now coming to the practice of archaeology in Nigeria, that's the next slide, please. Okay. Now surveying special data, Survey spatial data are collected using basically automatic level instead of the total station that I mentioned. And they are taken off the sites. You take them home before you analyze them and process them and get the necessary information. And most times we are taking down information using context sheets. There is no ready-made like a directory, online directory that you can save information on site and also make it available to interested viewers or audience. Now, short photographs are very important in archaeology, and most times, most times we use digital cameras, but there's an increasing need for drones to get good images of what we are doing. And also collecting of data, GIS data, most times we just write them down and go back to analyze them, but we can save them on our devices automatically. Now, as a solution to this gap between how archaeology is practiced in Nigeria and how it is done elsewhere, there are very, let me say, low budget digital resources that we can utilize and still make the best use of this current trend. One major one that has to do with mapping is Google Earth. Google Earth is common and is free. All you have to do is to go online, you log on to it, particularly Google Earth Pro. You can see where to download it. As you download it, it installs automatically on your system. And with this, you can do a lot of basic mapping. Please, next slide. The next slide, please. Now from this, you can see with Google Earth, yeah, you do this. The data you collect on the field, you use as your spreadsheet, like for example, Excel, to process it and import it here. There's this space here. This is where you input your coordinates, starting with latitude and longitude, and you press enter, and you have internet connection. As you press enter, it will take you to all these locations. It will take you to exact locations on Earth. And there are some other functionalities. You can move, you can zoom in and zoom out, and you can change your view to 3D or 2D view. And from this, you can extract a basic map with legend, with scale, and you can make measurement. Another important tool is a ruler. There's a ruler here that you can measure distances between features. These are basic and it's free for us to utilize. Now, even for our survey, we can still stick to our automatic level that is available. Next slide, please. Now, this is the traditional one. You can do this and analyze it, process it using Excel. By the time you do it, please, next slide. We have what is called software. Software, after you process it on Excel, you can import it into this software and you'll be able to generate 3D images, 2D images that is something close to what you use using your scanner, 3D scanner. And this software, at least, you can still have access to them. These are some of the resources available that we can utilize. Next slide, please. Okay, then talk of photo editing too. Now, this is an image that was snapped, and you can see some of the softwares that are available that I can use. Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Fireworks. This image, this was what was photographed, and I use Fireworks to edit it into this, and this looks more presentable. Same here, you use Adobe Illustrator. This was drawn using a pencil, and see what it has transformed this into, and it makes it more presentable. And these are some of the resources available to us online. Next slide, please. Now, yes, in conclusion, now digital archaeology has played a role in giving a methodological foundation, theoretical perspectives, and also whether or not digital technology has had an impact on the development of theories. Now, information technology has been used to integrate archaeological theory and archaeological methods and reintroduce the importance of the excavator's perception into the final interpretational processes. Then digital technology also has reduced, or it has lessened the gap between professionals on the one hand, and between professionals and the public, especially with the introduction of multimedia. you can share information easily with your fellow archaeologists and also with the general public. Now, and also as a suggestion, archaeologists need to collaborate, with researchers in computer-related disciplines, because collaboration will do better. If you don't have the skills to do this, at least you can collaborate with people and you'll be able to make the best. And I believe that with this, at least you are beginning to take a step towards closing the gap between the practice of archaeology in Nigeria and what is obtainable in the global north. Thank you.
Very much for the presentation, and thank you for keeping to time too. So we have the third presenter, Bashir Maiwada. Did I get?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Bashir Maiwada, a postgraduate student of Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, Department of History, Faculty of Arts. The title of my paper is Institutionalization of Digital Technology in Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria as a supporting tool for humanities scholarship. The aim of this paper aimed at tracing the historical development of digital technology in the university, as well as analyzes the utilization of digital technology in disciplines that are related to humanities. Introduction. Ahmadu Bello University was chosen as a case study because it belonged to what is generally known as first-generation universities, founded on 4th October 1962. It is also the second university in Nigeria to embrace the use of digital technology in academic activities. That is after University of Ibadan in 1963. The university established its first computing unit in 1967 with a clear vision to transform the way it conducts its core academic activities. However, being the first university, the institutionalization of digital technology has opened more room for the university to use digital tools to support both academic and administrative activities. Significantly, the invention of digital technology, especially computer, internet, and World Wide Web, has helped in providing means of disseminating information. This system has helped not only universities in Europe and America, but also African universities, particularly in the use of digital tools such as computers, digital audios, digital recorders, internet to access emails, as well as to exchange information or to publish related materials with other communities across the globe. Digital humanities, or the engagement of digital technology with humanities, was said to have started with an Italian Jesuit, Father Roberto Busa, in 1949, who indexed the work of St. Thomas Aquinas and other related scholars using IBM machine. His engagement with technology was said to have opened room for more scholars in the early 1960s to see the benefit and began to show more interest in using digital technology in what counts, especially using Concordance program. However, this engagement with technology later metamorphosed and led to what is known as digital humanities, as a field that is considered as interdisciplinary and also a field that considers technology as a study object, as a medium of expression, among other things. Historical development of digital technology in Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Historical record has shown that the university have engaged in using digital tools right from 1960s, the establishment of the university in 1962, using microfilm and microfiche as a supporting tool for the storage of the university library resources. Other devices were introduced in 1976, such as photocopying services, radios, film strip, slides, cameras, and other devices. On the screen, the one by the left side is called the microfilm reader. The one by the right side is microfiche reader, while the other one by the left side is the microfilm tape, while this one with boxes is the microfiche tape. This is a radio recorder. This another plate, a disc. This is a video audio recorder, and this is a cassette. All these tools were used by the university in early 1960s up to the stage of 1998. By 1976, the university began to see more benefit of using digital technology in academics and show more interest in establishing an independent computer center, which is known as Ahmadu Bello University Computer Center. This is the front view of the center. A server 72 mainframe machine was used by the University Computer Center called CDC-70. This is the mainframe machine of the computer. This is the tape roller, while this is the tapes that were used by the former machines to store information or resources, university resources. However, this development led to more opportunities whereby the university replaced the server 72 with server 932 in 1989. With this development, especially the global invention of digital technology, a microcomputer, which become available at the global markets, it makes the university to install microcomputers in 1998. And this availability of microcomputers made it easier for the university, and all operations became end user operations, because the university that owned an independent computer centers with the available of microcomputers at the global market, department and faculties began to show more interest and own their own independent computer, strictly for their own use. However, the next slide, no, not the on the digital technology, the previous one, please. Digital technology in humanity, no. Next. Yeah, this one. The establishment of digital, the installation of microcomputers in the university also come along with the internet connection, because the university, Nigerian Universities Commission serves as the source for introduction of internet connection and networking services of Nigerian universities in 1997, because the NUC has introduced what we call NUNET as a university network, Nigerian University Network to all federal universities across the country in order to facilitate easy access of research material and also connect them with the global world using emails. Then, by the way, with this opportunity, the university sees this opportunity and have their own independent in-house connection in 2001, together with 15 workstation cafes in order to facilitate easy access of academic activities in the university. Next. Digital technology. This one. Digital technology in humanities of Ahmadu Bello University, 1998 to 2050. It is important to understand that prior to this introduction of microcomputers in the university, even right from 1960s, traditionally, academic activities and administrative services were carried out using manual methods, using clerks and messengers to help in exchanging letters and report from faculties to faculties, department to the central administration, among other things. The university, academically, research in humanities is being carried out through information gathered from the library, whether written or unwritten, and also analyzing primary and secondary sources, such as oral interviews, visual records, among other things. In the university, Ahmadu Bello University, academic activities particularly in humanities, largely depend on the use of printed and unprinted materials. Through the aid of the university library, archives, and also Ahmadu Bello University Printing Press. With this opportunity, the university began to distribute computing facilities in each faculty in order to enhance or to make the resources available to the university faculties, particularly the university, the different disciplines that are part of humanities. This made everything to become easier. Online resources became available, such as Arabic resources, digital repositories, government documents, online catalog, open access, among others on the screen. Next, please. Utilization of digital technology in Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Internet and software. However, with these available resources in the university, disciplines in humanities were only allowed or configured, the resources were configured to only internet search and also use of available resources, which the softwares, including Microsoft Word. Most of the activities of scholars and students in the humanities were done with this Google search and word processing, especially for typing. While the ICT resources is also used as a communication tools between scholars in the university. Also, project publication becomes available to the universities, to the university database, and also more scholars in humanities began to publish their materials or collections with the university library and other communities across the globe. Benefit of digital technology to humanities in research. The university have engaged with the availability of internet resources in the university. It has engaged in creation of digital resources and digitized collection, which started in 2005 for future use. This comes along with the establishment of digital library by the university in order to make things soft and easy and also save cost of data. Time saving, sourcing of teaching and research materials. The available resources were only confirmed to sourcing of teaching and research materials to staff and students within the university. It also saves time and less cost. New ways of inquiry. The benefit of using digital technology to humanities also creates new ways of inquiry and analysis, particularly data visualization, text mining, and statistical analysis of humanities data. It also led to publications of more materials or public resources owned by the humanities scholars. It also creates avenue for chat, discussion groups, and also time saving. This will give more room for scholars to have online lectures, group discussions, and also share ideas, perspective with other scholarly communities across the globe. It also creates interdisciplinary project because humanities alone, humanities engagement with technology cannot do it alone. There is need for collaboration with other related departments that are more likely engage with technology. Next slide. In conclusion, there is need for collaboration between humanities disciplines and other disciplines in the university, particularly Department of Library and Information Science, Computer Science, and also Computer Engineering. This collaboration will enhance and also strengthen this humanities discipline, particularly in the area of digitization and also creation of database. There is also need for collaboration between the university library, which is Kashim Ibrahim Library, in order to locate and identify resources that are related to humanities in the university. There is also suggestion, in conclusion, the research has suggested for establishment of digital humanities center, because with the available resources at the university, humanities discipline were only resources were only configured to Google search and also using Microsoft Word, particularly Microsoft Word spreadsheets, Microsoft Excel, and PowerPoint presentations. There is also need with this suggestion for the creation of the Digital Humanities Center. There is also need for space training skills, workshops, and conferences on digital humanity, particularly on the significance and benefit of digital humanities in the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You all kept to time. And we have learned a lot from the different presentations, touching on different areas. Someone talked on literature and digital humanities, someone on archaeology, and the last speaker gave us a historical record on digital humanities in his own universities. Sorry. Now it is time for question and answer. Maybe I should start with my own questions. You note the questions down, then you'll be called upon to respond. Okay, the first presenter, sorry, you mentioned a lot of technologies and apps in enhancing research and teaching in literature. And I was curious, asking, which of these apps or technologies are more appropriate in expanding creative writing? And also in your presentation, you mentioned that there writing has become passive, if I got it very right. And I asked, what are the reasons for this, for being passive in writing? Then for the, I don't want to mention names so that I will not I will not call your name wrongly. For the second presenter on archaeology, in the introductory part, said you want to evaluate between, the issue of digital humanities in with respect to archaeology. You want to evaluate between the global north and Nigeria. And I asked, what is the basis of your evaluation? Yes, you mentioned particular maybe software or app that is not available in Nigeria. And that is very expensive and there is no specialist even to handle it. And you talked about finances, but towards the end of your presentation, you mentioned some apps and some technologies, the Google Art, and also that would help enhance research in archaeology. And I was like, if you have all this, without that, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of that software, and we don't have that. Does it make our research less than from the global north? And the last presenter, okay, and then, sorry, and I also asked then, how then do you collect your data if we don't have some of these and we have some? Then for the last presenter, you talked about, well, the historical record of expansion of digital technologies in your university, and you stopped at 2015, and I asked, why 2015? I'm sure between 2015 and 2021, there will be newer technologies that are present in the university. So I think we should.
Thank you for the presentations. But my question is to the first presenter. I don't know, I stepped out while you were presenting, but I did not hear, I don't think I heard you conceptualize the Nigerian digital literature. So are you speaking of, literary and in the e-book format, or are you talking about literature in the local dialects, now in the digital space? Or are you speaking of, creative works that explore contemporary realities in the English language? So I think it's just good that you conceptualize that Nigerian digital literature. I know you mentioned form. So is it just the form you're concerned about? That's it.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentations. Now, my question goes to the first presenter. Now, I want to know, is there any constraints in creative writing in relations to digital production? And also for my archaeology friends. Now, you did mention a lot about excavations in various sites. So I'm curious, and I want to know those sites where those excavations took place. So what happened to those sites? Because I'm thinking of the environment, environmental degradations. So how does the archaeologists manage those sites that are excavated?
Thank you very much. My name is Adejeke. My question goes to the historian. So you give a kind of history of digital humanities. Can you hear me? A history of digital humanities at the University of Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. I'm wondering, since there's something you mentioned in your work, which might be unconventional for a historical study, which is suggestion. And since you're talking about suggestions, I'm wondering, are there, can you highlight the importance, the benefit of these things? Like pinpoint something that's been done with the so-called digital humanities that have been present on Zaria campus since the 1960s. Can you make references to how the microfilms have been used? To what extent have they helped the curriculum building, for example, in that institution, for it to be something that other universities should take cognizance of, or for it to be developed? Thank you.
Okay, the first question is, which of the app is more appropriate in the creation of creative writing in digital space? Now, the issue of technological apps, in particular the social media app, has to do with the netizen choices in the digital space. The app you prefer most in terms of composing your art within that space, so that making a definite comment in terms of the most appropriate app is to restrict netizens in terms of their production on the digital space. At present, what we are doing in digital humanities in terms of literatures that are published on that space is to map the space, collect the data, and analyze the data. To what extent do they represent literature, and to what extent is the social media space coding and programming imposing on the literature that is produced on that space? The next question was creative writing is passive. And I didn't say that. What I said is that there are a lot of passive criticism on the digital space, in the sense that traditional scholars, those who are within the ages of 50, who have attained professorship, associate professors, have refused to come on that space to criticize the literature. In most project defense, there's this zero definition of literatures that are produced on the digital as pornographic literature of flesh and sex, but it is beyond that. So to link me to the other question, which asked, does space setting constraint digital space? Yes and no. The digital space, such as technological app, programming and coding, expand our perception of creative writing and the teaching of literature in the 21st century. So that in the teaching of literature based on the binary of oral and print, we will be doing disservice to our generation in conceptualizing literature based on that binary concept of oral literature and print literature into the discussion of digital literature. However, the problem we are facing is that traditional scholars who are in position of decision making in project defense, in conferences and all that, are rejecting the data we are using in analysis. Some are saying that literatures that are produced on Facebook in terms of the use of emojis, the mixture of sounds, letters, pictures, cinematography, etc. does not represent literature. However, they fail to understand that the definition of oral literature was more or less based on the generation that was producing it. And each time I speak, I make a point that literature that are produced in the cyberspace are by netizens, those who are born in the age of computer technology, those who use those technological apps, those who find their reality, even parents with their existence on that space. They understand the nuances of what literature represents on that space. Now, the next question was the need to conceptualize African digital literature. Now, African digital literature are literatures that are produced on the cyberspace that makes use of digital technology and social media platforms to realize their forms, whether in African languages or Nigeria or the English language. Some scholars have argued that the English language is an African language as a result of the influences that the traditional African society and the traditional African culture is imposing on our perception of the language. Now, African digital literature are literatures that when they move away from the digital space, they lose their forms. Take, for instance, Olorinro, which was trended on the social media space, comes in multiple forms. Just as it comes in cinematography, it comes in pictures, it comes in sound, it comes in written words. And when you move it away from that space, something happens to the text. The same way the distinctive characteristics of oral literature is the form, is the same way the distinctive characteristics of Nigerian digital literature is zeroed on the concept of form, in the sense that, take for instance, the concept of NSAS. Though the government have bound nsars.com, you see that there is multiple storytelling within that space. There is a means to access that platform if you want to break the rules. Pardon me for that. Now, if you look at the autobiography and biographical format, it exists in music, it exists in pictures, it exists in cinematography, it exists in written words. So digital literature is quite different from digitalized forms. We are talking about digital-born narratives that makes use of the nuances of the organic space, in the sense that you will agree with me that digital literature cannot exist because it is built on the premise of the oral and print. The netizens are products of the organic society, so they borrow certain nuances to interact and to compose art within that space. But there are slight differences in terms of authorship, in terms of the use of emojis, and in terms of the use of multimediality in painting cognitive experience in the 21st century within the digital space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for what actually differentiates the practice of archaeology in the global north and what is obtainable here is the gap is really wide. If we should, to be really honest, if you see how it is being done there, we are far behind, because apart from when you look at, in fact, archaeological research in those places, there are even more companies that sponsor research. They sink in a lot of money into that, so they get all the necessary equipment. But here, there's a difference between what they do and what we do. I mentioned for surveying before you carry out excavation, where you use a total station. And I also emphasize the issue of real-time recording. That means you are attaching monitors to the device, that as you are acquiring the data, you are viewing it on your system. If there is need for any adjustments, you can do that before, as you are working, you are adjusting and you are already interpreting on the site. But in the absence of that, now here, where we have only the dumpy level to use, there's someone controlling the staff, you take your measurements, you are just writing it down. It's when you go back, you process it. you process it and use. Now, if any information is missing, you have to go back to the site to repeat the process. So it's already time consuming and it's less accurate compared with what's obtainable. However, that does not mean that we should fold our hands and watch. With the little we have, we can still make the best out of it. That's what I mean. Because by the time you get those data, even you try to be as careful as possible. When you go back, you do not have scanner laser to do your modeling, but at least with the data you get, that's why I mentioned software. You can now use Excel to process your data and you'll be able to generate 3D survey plans too. It's just that it may not be as accurate as what's obtainable there, but at least you are doing something. Because now this is linked, it goes back to the issue of disseminating archaeological findings. By the time you want to send your publication to high impact journals, they are so much interested in how you acquired your data. By the time they see some things are missing, they will be doubtful. But at least if you make effort to do something that is a little bit close, they may consider it. So that's just the aim of this presentation. Then I think I've partly answered the second question to how you acquire data. Then on the issue of environmental degradation, as archaeologists, we are guided by, there's an ethics guiding the practice of the discipline. When you go to the field and you carry out excavation, maybe because I mentioned that archaeology is destruction, it's not from that point of view. Wherever you carry out excavation, you dig pits, you don't leave it open. Before leaving the site, you are expected to backfill it. You must backfill it so it won't give room to erosion and all that. But I know our activities on the field, in a way, it may kind of affect the environment because as we trample on the vegetation, already some vegetation are beginning to die, they will die, but we try as much as possible to minimize the cutting down of trees when doing our survey. And instead of cutting up trees to do pegs, we come to the field with our ready-made pegs that builders use. We can use iron rods to ensure that no much damage is done there. And there are instances whereby, as you are carrying out the excavation, you run out of resources and time. You will not be able to complete the excavation. You still don't leave it open. You still backfill it. There's normally you are expected to use a large plastic bag to put in the pit before you backfill. Next season, when you have the time and the resources, you come back, you now bring out the soil. The plastic bag will guide you as to where you stopped the last time and you continue from there. I don't know whether it's that. Thank you.
Choosing 2015 is a part of an ongoing project which I'm doing. That's why I tend to time in it in 2015. But even though when we compared the same 2015 with the present 2021, still humanities scholars in the university are not really interested in engaging digital technology. This is one of the reasons why I find that still students of humanities are not engaging these or exploring the opportunity they have despite all the available digital centers and resources in their faculties. Relation to your question, microfilm and microfiche and other in-house services like the copying services have helped the university in storage of vital information, especially from the early 1960s. And also scholars in humanities then have engaged those tools. But the problem is that with this advent of computer or introduction of computing facilities into the university system, they were not engaging those tools the way they engage microfilm recorders and other cameras and other devices as of then. That was around 1960s, 70s, 80s, and early 1990s. And also what you talk about the collaboration with other universities, there is serious need for collaboration, not only within the university's department, but also with other universities. Like last 2 months, there was a conference I held at University of Lagos. They have a digital humanities center. Thank God for the director that linked me with the Professor Okwemi, and I have to collaborate. Has to linked me with so many scholars that can help me to develop on digital humanities activities. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is for Onyekachi Onuoha. I wanted to know what are the links between the formal and the digital literature, if there are some authors that are actually writing on both platforms, and also, according to you, what will be the legacy of this digital literature and all the narratives that are developed on social media?
Thank you. Macham, I've got a question for you. It's about, I guess it's about the public repository of Kashim Ibrahim Library. You know, the public repository of Kashim Ibrahim Library? Yeah, the repository. It's very rare. In Nigeria, I've never seen something like that. It's a very good idea. I've used it for teaching. I've used it everywhere. I've seen such a repository in Dakar, in West Africa. I'm sure there's one in Cape Town. I'm sure there's one maybe in Dar es Salaam, maybe in Nairobi. How come actually it's a very good resource? Where would it come from? That's the question, you know? Who had the idea of such a good repository? If you go on the website of Kashim Ibrahim Library, you know, that's a question for you. In the repository? Yeah, the Kashim Ibrahim Library repository. Yes. Who had the idea? That's my question. My question for you as well. About maps. Myself, I'm very interested in mapping. I do lots of maps. And sometimes I want to show things in my maps. As you said, I want to disseminate knowledge and to show to people what I'm doing. But sometimes I wonder if, one question, am I just showing something? Or am I doing research based on my maps? So is a map research, is it a dissemination tool or a research tool, I guess? That's the question for you.
Sorry, so I was asking if you know some authors, some writers that are writing in both digital literature and formal literature, and what are the links that are made between like the digital writings and the formal writings, the formal literature, books and everything, and also what will be the legacy of the digital narratives that are written on social media? Did you get it now? Okay.
Thank you very much. Like we have many netizens, for instance, Ofemubi writes on IG, that's Instagram. It makes use of sound, it makes use of picture, it makes use of cinematography, etc. to portray the form of art on that space. Autobiographical writing, for instance, as represented in just concluded NSAS, not all SAS. That form itself, in that form, it's autobiographical and it pays attention to the restriction that Twitter imposes, the use of 150 characters and the writing in terms of thread, so that when you're talking about autobiography, or biographies, you're talking about the concept of multiple authorship and the concept of popular narrative. So that when you're talking about, for instance, the celebration of IFRA moved into people sharing pictures, spoken word, written narratives, etc. And it's far different from Achebe's There Was a Country. It's far different from Chinamanda's Half of a Yellow Sun. So that we now have community on the social media space telling their story and resisting order. And this community makes use of the concept of multimediality, so that with the use of a trend hashtag, you can find such narrative on Twitter, you can find it on YouTube, you can find it on Facebook and all that. Now, the just concluded narrative of Cut Soap, there's a certain Cut Soap challenge on Instagram, it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, it's on WhatsApp, etc. Such narrative is an attempt for Nigerians to survive the hardship. so that they look at the process of the symbolic bathing that is related to spiritual soup of wealth, etc. And now what this form of narrative does is that it pushes our boundary and our perception of literature in Africa and in the universities. But the problem we are having in presenting this text in terms of departmental defense for our graduating students in analyzing social media literatures as a form of literature is that the institution, those who mount the gates of scholarship, hardly accept that what is produced on that space represent literature, so that you have more work to do to convince traditional scholars that this represent literature. Because recently I had a problem where a student had to study NSAS poems, which came in various forms. And some persons were insisting that they needed a collection because traditionally the literary analysis of poem were more or less restricted to a particular author or two authors. But we are having, let's say you're studying 50 poems and you are to engage the temperament of 50 poets. And traditional scholars are asking, we need a collection of a particular poet, but the norm on that space do not allow a single author in quote to produce multiple poems. Although Twitter allows thread of a particular narrative to exist, but in most cases, in most works that are composed on that space is a reflection of the oral form, which has to do with multiple storytelling and multiple characters and multiple personalities existing as characters based on their handles on that space. Thank you.
Yes, on the question whether mapping is a research tool or dissemination tool, I think it's both, because it becomes a tool mostly for we archaeologists, it's just an aspect of your research. But I've seen projects that are just mainly on mapping. Yes, I've seen even a presentation here in IFRA about somebody mapping migration using GIS. So it's more of to show movement of people, and it's only through mapping that it will be able to explain that. So I think both, it works in both ways. So it depends on your research objective or what you want to share. And now the good thing about GIS mapping is that it has also given room for, it's linked now to the web. It's linked to the web. So the little thing you do, you can as well share. Like a good example is ArcGIS Online. The problem is still the access issue, but I know there was a time that they gave access during the pandemic. And I even did a project that I even sent for a publication that I cannot now I cannot have access to the data. But at least you've done something. So how keep doing it? You already have a thing that we share with, and it's interesting. Thank you.
We have come to the end of this session. We have a lot to take home and a lot of lessons that we have learned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for your time. Please stay with us. We're going to start again at 3 break, okay?
Sèche tes pleurs, je ne partirai pas. Il m'en faudrait bien plus que ça pour tout détruire, anéantir ça. Sèche tes pleurs et refais-moi l'amour. Te souviens-tu de cet enfant que tu voulais me faire en chantant? Je t'aime encore si fort, non pas sans toi.
Thank you also to all the IFRA team, but some of them here, Mr. Bumi, Mr. Davis, thank you for coming. I do thank, Mr. Laulu as well, Mr. Ulushola Patrick Babalola, he's not here, and Mr. Mbela, who worked a lot. But let me thank, I want to thank all of you here for all your work. Oh yes, he's here. Oh no, he's not here. Our last panel of the day is now, it's gonna happen now. Our two presenters will be online, and our moderator is already here, as you can tell. Let me hand on the microphone to Dr. Sara Panata.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Thank you for coming to this last panel of our first day of conference. I'm very happy to welcome our two presenters that they will be online. So I would like to spend some minutes to present them because they will not have the occasion to exchange with you after the presentation. So I would like just to spend a few words to introduce them. The first presenter is Bruno Véras. Bruno Véras is a Brazilian-born digital historian and cultural producer. He is currently a PhD candidate in history at York University in Canada. He previously worked as UNESCO principal investigator in African Brazilian history. His work focuses on public and digital scholarship, memory, global Africa, historical slavery, and art education. He has developed multimedia educational projects, such as studies in the history of African diaspora documents, and also digital public history initiatives, such as Projeto Bukwakwa, that you can access online. Our second presenter is Yao Adujamfi. Yao is a postgraduate Asante history researcher at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, Ghana. Yao is also pursuing a PhD in Dewel at the University of Johannesburg with the view of developing a body of research around making use of indigenous knowledge and skills for effective policy making at Swame Magazine in Ghana. So I will now give the floor to our first presenter, Bruno Véras.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So yes, good morning. First of all, I would like to thank the organization and everybody working hard to make this event happening. It's not a easy year for no one in the world. So it's really something to highlight, all the effort and hard work to make this international conference to happen. So yes, today I'm going to present a very special project that was born, I would say, maybe the first steps in 2015, and we got to launch it 1 year ago, in a little bit more than 1 year ago, late 2019. And then we're not actually really able to make the traveling exhibition circulate around the world as we were planning to take this to Katsina, to take this to Sokoto and other places. But we will. Let's wait for the world to be vaccinated, and then we can even plan something in Ibadan. But first of all, let me share my screen, and then you'll know more about what I'm talking about. Oh, host disabled, participant screen sharing. Can you help me? Then I can share my screen. Let me try now. Yeah. Okay, now you can see my screen, right? Okay, so yes, today I'm going to talk about the Fragments of Memory project. Hello? Yeah, I think the audio is okay. So yes, I invite you right now to not pay attention to my presentation, maybe you can explore a little bit using your phone while you're paying attention to what I'm going to explain. You can go to this website, fragmentsofmemory.org, because maybe while I present you this project using this PowerPoint presentation, you can give a quick look at the website, okay? We have this kind of two kind of media outputs for this project. That is the digital side of it. And we also have, let's say, the exhibition part of it that I'm going to show you, okay? So yes, my quick presentation is going to be divided in 3 parts. I'm going to tell you more about the project as a kind of introduction, how it came about, the concepts, the biographies, and you're going to see how key is the idea of biographies in global Africa for this project. And I'm going to talk about the aims of the project using, I would say, art education concepts. So yes, this project really started in 2015. I had some ideas in mind while I was in Recife, my hometown, in Northeast Brazil, not very far from Salvador, Bahia, a city that has a very close connection with Southeast Nigeria. And yes, back then, and this also explains how this project came about, I was a school teacher, teaching history, teaching art education in Brazil, and I was also working for UNESCO as a principal investigator in a grant to develop museum exhibitions and think about biographies of African people in the diasporas between the 15th century and 19th century. Actually, my PhD research is focused on that, is focused on slavery in Brazil, most specifically people from West Africa enslaved in Brazil and freed and creating community. Actually, a Muslim community in Brazil. So I'm investigating Hausa and Fulani people from as today's Nigeria and northern Benin in Brazil. So yes, and back then I was also working, developing a new project called Project Bakwakwa. And if you are Hausa, you know the meaning of Bakwakwa with the hook. About the biography of this man, Mahoma Gardo Bakwakwa. He was enslaved in 1845, and he was shipped through Dahomey to my hometown, to Recife, and he found a way to write his autobiography when he fled to New York. Then he lived in Haiti for three years, went back to USA, and living in Canada, not very far from where I'm living now. He wrote his autobiography, and his history was amazing. And I thought that his history should be more known, not just in Brazil, but everywhere he was, in the Atlantic world, for people to know more about the, let's say, the biggest history of migration, of forced migration in the history of humanity. That was the transatlantic slave trade. And Bakwakwa was one of these 12 million people who was forced to be transported from many different parts of Africa and sent to the Americas. And yes, I was developing this project. I was writing a book and doing work with Professor Paul of Joy, Nelson Bezerra from Rio de Janeiro, and Robin Law from Scotland. And I was creating a digital humanities project that now is really paused because I must finish my PhD dissertation. And then I started to have very interesting, unexpected communication in social media. And we just talked about social media and literature and how interesting is analyze these things and the potentiality for that in digital humanities. And I got to communicate with Pablo Parra, a very interesting artist from São Paulo, the state of São Paulo in southeast Brazil. And we start to develop some ideas and think about a concept for a new art-based project. I was working on biographies for my project, biographies of enslaved people. That's quite something, I would say, hard to investigate compared to, I don't know, the history of a king, the history of a president. I was studying the history and biographies of enslaved African men and women. And we had quite interesting stories that we start to think about the project about that. And then we got to develop this concept that was an art-based project to invite one artist. And for this first edition, the artist invited was Pablo Parra, who was also developing this concept with me, and study getting a kind of immersion with 5 different scholars investigating 5 different biographies of people enslaved in the transatlantic slave trade, but not just in the transatlantic slave trade, because we sometimes forget about the trans-Sahara slave trade, the Indian Ocean slave trade. So when you see the biographies that we decided to go for, you will understand the global dimension of this African history. There's also an important concept for us that Professor Lovejoy and Falola and other very important scholars studying African history developed. And yes, one artist, different styles. In the case of Pablo, he is a graphic artist with a punk, very, I would say, postmodern style, warm colors, rough drafts, very modern. So you see his art. Got to study with 5 different scholars to produce like 5 different graphic representations of the life of these 5 people. And to do that, we got involved with UNESCO through Professor Paul Lovejoy and the Slave Root Project. That's very key, and now is under the direction of Professor Nguma to create this art-based project. And we decided to go with 5 studies and 5 scholars working in texts that are going to be published in the volume 10, the new volume, one of the new volumes that's going to come for the General History of Africa. And Professor Lovejoy is one of the co-editors of this project in a section specifically dealing with biographies. And from there, we decided to pick, let me just see the time. Okay, I'm cool. 5 different biographies. Some of these biographies, we didn't have any, let's say, photography or drawing about them, but we had descriptions of scarifications, body marks, age, or the characteristics of a personality, etc., etc. And the artist, he got to learn about the history of these people. He got to understand and got in a real immersion, I would say, into primary sources, into secondary sources, talking with the scholars. And some of the scholars were not really able to speak Portuguese because Pablo, he's fluent in Portuguese and Spanish, but not in French or Turkish, for example. So I got to mediate this conversation, and also at the same time we were developing this concept to plan actually for a second step, and I'll tell you more about that. So yes, so the first historical character that Pablo got to understand and learn about was Osife Kunde. He was Yoruba, and he was enslaved in Brazil. Then he found a way to go to Paris with his master, where he became free. And then he also decided to go back to Brazil, even with the risk of being re-enslaved. But he decided to go back to Brazil because he was missing his son. And you see how Pablo Parra tried to represent his story. And I would say it's not just about representing the story, but also about representing a feeling. You know, the artist was really in an immersion, and he got to represent graphically what he was feeling about the history, and not just the history, you know. Mahoma Gardo Bakwakwa, he was Hausa, and his history is amazing, I just mentioned. Catherine Mulgrave Zimmerman, he was from Angola, and he was captured illegally in the coast of Angola, and he was going to be shipped to Cuba. And her history is also amazing. He was sent to Accra, and she became one of the first school teachers there in Accra, in a mission, in the Basel mission. Gracia Maria da Conceição Magalhães, Nelson Bezerra from Rio de Janeiro, he's studying her history. And her history is also very, very interesting. You can know more, actually, expanded texts in the website that I just invited you to explore. And Diraga, he was from Ethiopia, and when he was a kid, he was captured, and he was castrated, and he became a eunuch in the courts of the last Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. So yes, the aims of this project. Maybe we can divide the aim of this project in three parts. The conceptual objective is really to make people know about these histories, because they are really important. We are talking about one of the biggest events and longest events of the history of humanity. Forced migration, 12 million people being shipped to the Atlantic, or the millions of people being shipped through the Sahara trade, etc., etc. And Brazil was really in the center of that. Nigeria was in the center of that. Many other parts of West Africa and the Ottoman Empire. So we try to have histories on all these places to talk about. Attitudinal objective. So we wanted people to know more about that, and I think art is something very interesting for children and people to know about that, because we want to fight racism. Between 1850, actually until 1850, when Brazil really abolished slavery, for example, for every one European arriving in what is today Brazil, 8 Africans were brought. So 1 to 8. Felipe Alencastro, a great historian, he analyzed these numbers. And even though we can see these numbers of people migrating or being forced to migrate to Brazil, there is still lots of racism and lack of, I would say, empathy of Brazilians and other people in the Americas with African history and the history of Africans in the Americas. So we want people to learn about these histories through biographies, knowing a name, knowing a face, knowing that Bakwakwa loved his mother, he had a family, he had a religion. So we think biographies is really key for people to identify themselves with this history and create a sense of empathy. And the artistic objective, really for fruition, and people appreciate the art and understand more about these stories through art. Here we have some of the drafts and conceptualization of the art by Pablo Parra, this amazing artist from São Paulo. How he thought about the mixed media use of different, let's say, tools to create his art, the color palette, he tried to make this more uniform, and some of the final solutions here. Bakwakwa, and each part of what is inside this frame has a meaning in the history. He really tried to represent, and you can know more about that in the website. Gracia Maria, Ossifecundi, and you can see here the hand of his son and his hand, and a kind of reference to Paris and to Rio de Janeiro. Catherine Mulgrave Zimmerman, you can know more about them in the website. Nadiraga also. So yes, the exhibition, this first edition of the Fragments of Memory project, was launched at York University in Toronto, and now it's locked at the Harriet Tubman Institute. We can't take these the frames and everything from there. All the tags in 5 different languages: Portuguese, English, French, Spanish, and Turkish. We can't take this from the exhibition from there to travel with this, but we are planning to go first to Brazil, then we are going to Istanbul, and most likely we are going to go to Katsina, because the advisory board, we have Professor Babajo Sani from Umaru Yaradua University, and we are planning to do something, maybe Baden, we don't know. After this pandemic is over, we will reset the world and see how things are going to really to work. The bibliography for the project, all the primary sources that we used, and I can show you the website a little bit. Where is it? Here. So yes, for now the website is in English and in Portuguese, but we just got a small grant from Ciresc, directed by Professor Miriam Cotias from the École d'Altitude and Sciences Sociales. And we are planning to do a second edition. Again, the same concept. One artist from Global Africa. We had one from Brazil. Now we're planning to have someone from the continent, maybe from Francophone Africa, Senegal, maybe Congo, or maybe Nigeria. And we are studying like different artists, different styles, something maybe now different from Pablo. And this artist is going to be invited to work and be in an immersion with 5 different scholars from the global Africa. And we are planning to do a second edition, analyzing again 5 different stories, life stories and biographies of people from the African diasporas. So yes, I think I am on time. I hope you will not have very hard questions for me, and I'll be here. Thank you.
Hello? Hello? Are you with us?
I am.
Okay. You can start. You have 20 minutes. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me start my audio my video briefly and say that I'll be I'll put it off. My video. So let me start by greeting everyone. I think it's around almost 3:30 in Nigeria, and it's around 2:30 here. So I greet everyone. Good afternoon from Kumasi, here in Ghana, and I would like to discuss with you this afternoon about the role of digital humanities in preserving history and creativity in African traditional music. And I'll be using a case of the Yaudine Adwa music group. Can you go to the next slide? Otherwise, I can also insert from here, so that share from here, so that I can control it. Let me try and share from here to have control. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So I would like to open an introduction by saying that the issue of digital humanities is not something that has been very popular in Ghana, even within the academia in Ghana. Elsewhere, the issue of digital humanities has been for decades been a subject of discussion in very in most departments and universities across the world. in Ghana. And in talking about the digital humanities, I want to bring in the issue of African music and the fact that African music is seen as an integrated total art, which highlights the distinction between traditional and the contemporary. And then the fact that the emphasis is on responsibility and encouragement and group performance. And here we are talking about music of pre-colonial era. In Ghana, pre-colonial era, you are looking at so in Ghana, I will give you like 3 dimensions. In Ghana, there used to be the Gold Coast, which was mainly the capital now, Accra, and the region of Cape Coast and other places around the coast. So it used to be the Gold Coast, which was by the bond of 1844, came under British control. So for Asante, which came under British control in 1901, when we talk about pre-colonial music, we are talking about pre-1901 music, which is rooted in the culture and also the traditions of the group, the Asante group. Now, why are we so interested in bringing in African music as part of the, in the area of digital humanities? Because traditional African music has proven to be the oldest and has survived Western influence and cultural onslaughts, rising to become not just the most permanent music form, but in African society, but also the most popular. Now, it's not just music for entertainment, but it's music that preserves our culture. So in Adwa music, which I'll be talking about briefly, there is movements that depict language, movements that or songs that depict the store of knowledge, in that knowledge is transferred within the music and stored in the music. Music that stores folklore or preserves folklore, and most importantly, history, which I'll be dwelling on. Then there's also the fact that traditional music is discussed in terms of its defining features. Continuous learning through traditional apprenticeship and participation. And I think in Nigeria, when we talk about apprenticeship, it is very pronounced there, especially in the area of entrepreneurship. So what is Adwa music? Adwa music is a quintessential indigenous Asante music or Akan music, because Asantes are part of the larger Akan group in Ghana, which form about 60% of the population here in Ghana. And it's an ensemble that consists of 2 bells. So in Chi, we call it Deru. And it's a single clapless boat or shaped like bell. And the most common that you can find will be a Deura or the split type bell, which I'll be showing you in a picture. And then there's also the 1 or 2 hourglass drums called Dono. And also one sonorous drum played by hand called the apentema, a petia or a tenor drum played with a stick, and then a tumpan. A tumpan is one that is manned by a male or a female. Has 2 drums, so male and female tumpan talking drums. In the olden days, these drums were used to send messages outside. So it confirms the fact that drumming within the music of the African, within African music, is also a store, a communication gadget in terms of sending out information to be acted on. So drumming in Ghana or in Africa, you can find is mostly done by men, but in this Adwa music, women demonstrate leadership from the back, in that they are the ones that sort of do the singing and also sort of control the pitch of the drum sound and also all of the other instruments. So if you take a look at the picture below, it shows you some of the drums, the hourglass shaped drums, the tumpan drums, being played by an Otrema. An Otrema is a master drummer. So the Yaojune group was formed where Yaugene is the group lead, was the group lead because he died. And the master drummer in Chi is called Otrema. And in spirituality of the Asante, the Otrema doesn't just doesn't just play the drum. The belief is that the rhythms of the drum itself are rhythms that are inherited from the gods. And so whoever is manning those two drums is communicating with the gods through that music. It's sending out messages, communicating with the living and also with the dead. The reason is that the Adwa music is played during funerals and during festive occasions. So festive occasions are for people living, and then for funerals is for communicating with the dead. So Yaugene traces ancestry to the very formation of the Asante Kingdom. And for those who are in tune with Ghanaian history, Asante history, African history, we know that the Asante Kingdom was formed in the late 17th century, around 1685 thereabout, gaining independence from another Akan group, the Denchira, in 1701. And so in 1717, the ancestors of Yaugene came to settle through the diplomacy of marriage, came to settle in the present day Kumasi Apatrapa area, which is part of the Asante Kingdom. Now, when he came of age and learned the craft from his father and also from the brothers of his father, he formed groups to entertain, to praise, of course, to perform historical events, and also on festive occasions and funerals. Now, the lyrical form and creativity of the drum rhythm, has stuck with the group even after the death of Yaugene, because of the way they were set up, and they've played over the years across Ghana, even at the court of the Menchia Palace since 1970, playing at the court of the Menchia Palace, entertaining the king, maintaining the historical antecedent of storing history, storing indigenous knowledge and the like. Now, why am I interested in digital humanities and to pursue a project of that nature? Now, we have an indigenous group or an indigenous music genre that continues or maintains a tradition, maintains who we are, maintains our language, and is a store of history to guide the living and to help us also even make sense of the future. But it's under threat because of the fact that it's orally held in content, and also contemporary music due to superior branding, digitization, and storage. So the idea is to take the fight to contemporary music in those fronts. So the challenge that we have is leading to a loss of history, creativity, and collaboration in music performance, especially in Ghana. And I'm sure that such groups are also in Nigeria, not the same group, but other groups that are similar in Nigeria and other places that may be suffering from or having such a threat. So we need to be able to deal with the threat, because Adwa music serves as plays a major role in the lives of everyday people in Ghana, and it's worthy of academic study to ensure that rare materials from the genre support efforts to expand knowledge and promote learning using digital humanities. Now, there are opportunities in digital humanities that we can be able to use to sort of preserve oral history, oral African history that is stored in music, in indigenous music. How do we can do that by being able to harness digital humanities through transcription of these songs, recording and web archiving of them, and also storing them in a journal that storing them also gives the opportunity that if they've been stored digitally and also archived on the web, for those of you academics who are in Nigeria at the University of Ibadan and elsewhere who want to do research and look into oral history stored in African music, it will be easy. The knowledge here would have been decolonized and made available as the repository of Asante heritage and also African heritage that the academics can use, and also help in providing understanding of the potential of digital humanities in an African context to enhance existing scholarship. Because by exploring ways of making use of digital humanities to save Asante music, Adwa Asante music, which stores oral history, we are also paving the way for others to do same. Others within Ghana and across Africa, where we find that increasingly we are very oral people, formal sector. And in there's a lot of knowledge that can be used for policy making, that can be used for planning, that can support the process of development. But because these knowledge are stored orally in different forms, including the Adwa Music Journal, inability to be able to explore the digital humanities to be able to enhance existing scholarship makes it difficult in terms of understanding our past, understanding who we are, and even our indigenous knowledge to be able to harness that for development. Now, we want to be able to decolonize access to ancient knowledge. And how can we be able to do that? With this, I intend to pursue a project that will be able to do digital recording of almost all of the knowledge that is stored. Okay, thank you. I have 5 minutes. I'll wrap up soon. Almost all of the knowledge that is stored in the music. So the digital recording of that, transcribing into Asante Chi, which is the local language, to help in reading and writing of our history in the local proper context of the language, writing in English, maybe we explore French as well, and then transcribing into music compositions, so that we'll be able to also extend the knowledge, the indigenous knowledge stored in such African genre into contemporary music compositions. And then being able to do digital and web archiving, making the knowledge stored available in the local language, in international languages, and also musical compositions for research purposes, starting with for research purposes, yes. So by doing so, I intend to be able to expand access to recorded literature on African indigenous history and heritage for scholarly and development purposes. I also intend to be able to manage and help in the management and dissemination of metadata or data about the data of interest, because once academics are able to get metadata on our indigenous music history stored in our music journal, they can be able to explore further. They can be able to develop a body of history around such. Then also be able to do, being able to manage the metadata to make it easier for researchers to access and analyze large data sets. Then the opportunity for collaboration, collaborative research and knowledge development with, among African studies, those doing African studies, music, development, innovation, creativity, and even entrepreneurship, which is associated with this music journal. Now, the project, as I've said, will be digital recording of original songs, compilation of a database with links to bibliographies, digital recordings in Asante Chi and English text transcriptions management, and then text transmission into musical compositions, web archiving as well. Thank you very much, and I hope I stayed within my time. Thank you. Hello. Hello. Okay, so maybe I can continue further. Hello? Or maybe wait for feedback and questions.
Can you please can you stop sharing?
Sure, thank you.
Okay.
Let me just start from the last speaker. I hope he's hearing me. Are you hearing me? The last speaker. Okay. My question is that what are the basic factors that is threatening the extinction of the Ghanaian Ashanti traditional music? Because from his analysis, I think the basic factors are not yet there. So I want to know what are the basic factors that that's affecting. Then don't they think that oral digital library and exchange of digital musical data with other researchers will influence or help in decolonizing and preserving our traditional music? Then the third one is talking about the knowledge of assets. I mean, talking about digital recording, translating. I'm of the opinion that when talking about this decolonization of the knowledge, we need to look at some basic other cultural influence on our music. Because if we don't look at that basic influence on our music, then we won't be able to go out of this, won't be able to decolonize the digital traditional music. So we have to look at that. That's my question for the first, the second speaker. For this first speaker, there's a name that I saw there, Osifekunde. That's a pure Yoruba name. And that's why in Brazil, in fact, if one wants to study or understand more the ancient Yoruba language, one needs to do more research in Brazil. And that's why the importance of knowing the meaning of name will help in this type of projects. Thank you.
My question goes to the first presenter. You mentioned something about tracing migration routes or routes. I don't know, maybe I didn't get you well. I don't know the method you intend to do that, whether is it specific places you are going to identify and then connect, because when you're talking of slave trading route, we expect to see a connection between settlements. So what method do you intend to use? Is it, because what comes to mind is GIS basically, but I don't know whether there's another method you intend to do. I'm so much interested in that. Thank you.
My question goes to the last speaker. Is Ghana, okay, is Ghana Ashanti music actually facing extinction, or it has been remediated? Let me say it has taken a new form. Are we saying it's actually facing extinction, or there is a move? Because basically in the study of music, I know that a generation that consume a particular form of art also affects the production of art. So are we saying that there is an extinction or there is a movement from the perception of music as it were then and the production of music now?
Thank you. So let's answer to this first set of questions. Let's start with Bruno Véras.
Okay, thank you for the questions. And I would say very interesting, not just for the project I'm presenting, but also for my own research and maybe for the future too. I'm going really to contact you about these ideas on GIS and geography, and I can tell you more about that. Regarding Osife and names and Yoruba language in Brazil, like old Yoruba language in Brazil, I would say maybe two sources would be interesting to look at. One of them, I'm looking at it for my PhD dissertation. That is old vocabulary lists produced by French diplomats and French travelers in 1833, Rio de Janeiro, and also in Bahia, where they get, let's say, Yoruba words and write the equivalent in French, and Hausa vocabularies. So these people got to interview some enslaved Africans or like freed Hausa and Yoruba people, and they produced lists. And one thing that I'm investigating now, especially for the Hausa part, is the some specific words, as you may know, and terms are more used on the Kano Katsina region, and other ones are more used in the Sokoto part of the north. And we can even identify from where people come from using these vocabularies. The second one is oral sources. We still have in Brazil some Baba and some other priests, like Orisha priests, who can speak Yoruba. Some of them, they can do, like, they can sing songs, like chants for the Orishas. Some of these chants, they don't know the meaning. But recently, we lost in Recife a very old Baba who was able to speak Yoruba. He went to the Ogun festival in Nigeria, and Ogun or Shango, I don't remember exactly which one was, 3 years ago, and he was speaking Yoruba with the king and the other priests, and they identify, oh man, this is a old Yoruba, really interesting. And he gave a hug and everybody. In Bahia, the same. So this is something that is being lost, this old oral knowledge of Yoruba, but this is still there on the chants. Some of these chants were recorded. So we still have lots of Yoruba language, I would say, in Brazil being lost. And some of these things were digitized, actually. So we can go back full circle to digital humanities. And I hope someone more skillful than me on the language will do something about that. Regarding geography and GIS and patterns of migration, all the very interesting sources in Brazil, again, coming from French travelers and diplomats, but not just them, some Portuguese also, and some British also, and some Turkish, Ottoman Turkish travelers also. They got also to interview some of these Hausa, Yoruba, and Fulani men in Brazil. And some of these men, they were really interesting. Some of them, they were really riders. They were horsemen and warriors for the Kano king or for Katsina. They took part in slave raiding, and ironically, they were enslaved somehow in the wars of the Sokoto Caliphate and shipped to Brazil. And in these interviews, these people describe, I come from the city, I took part in a campaign, we went east, and they described city by city by city by city until they got to the Mandara Mountains, and then they were raiding men with tail and women with tail. This mythical idea that I'm also investigating in my PhD. So all these cities that they mentioned, and is transcribed in French, so like phonetically. I'm trying to identify the real name in Hausa, analyzing some old colonial maps. And this is a beautiful, like, GIS project, trying to investigate Africa through the sources in Brazil and identify patterns of migration, scarification too. Horatio Hale, linguist, he draws so many scarifications. He identified, so these scarifications for Sukutu, this one from Kano, Kashina, etc., in many Yoruba cities, you know. So we know about like exactly the geography because of these sources precisely. Not really the sources from the transatlantic slave trade, ship records, but really precise and really meaty, interesting materials that comes from this biographical information. Thank you for the question.
Yes, so maybe I can take my questions.
Yes, can you do?
Thank you. Thank you. So the initial part of the questions, I may not have gotten very well. I was asked about the basic factors and also sharing of oral data. Yes, the sharing of oral data with other scholars, yes, I'll be glad in the course of the project, in the course of also the developing a body of research around what I'm doing. I'll be glad to be able to share with others, and others also share with me. So my contacts are available. So I'll be glad to hear from you or anyone who may be interested. The issue about basic factors, I think maybe if I got you right, the basic factors as to whether the music is going extinct. I want to add that to you know, that I want to be able to address that, and with also the decolonization issue. The basic factors are there. The fact that even there are a few of the songs that are digital and are even on YouTube. But if you compare that to the music rendition that they perform, the same group performs of what their ancestors did previously, you see that there's a marked difference in terms of the quality of the drumming, the quality of the singing, and even about the words used, the history recounted. All of that is changing a bit. Even some of the words used, sometimes you have to ask a lot of people before you understand the native word used, because they were not translated or transcribed. So it becomes difficult for continuous learning. So that's something that the project seeks to change. You know, so that we're able to make history a living, you know, a living thing to be able to engage in. But the issue about decolonization, I think the decolonization thing has moved away from just looking at the West, but knowledge that is held and not available for scholarship is also colonized. And so decolonization here as used is in context, is in the context that the knowledge, the indigenous knowledge and the history that is stored in this indigenous music genre for Asante, Ghana, and African history is colonized in the fact that the dynamics are changing, the quality is changing, and extension is gradually seeping in, because even at funerals and festive occasions, people like to use digital systems and recorded music and things like that instead of doing this live Adwa music. And so it faces a danger of extension. So through this project, the idea is to decolonize the knowledge held in there and to make it possible for scholars like me and you to be able to have access to indigenous knowledge, to original oral source knowledge that we can use to deconstruct our history, which is very, very important. Now, somebody asked about whether the elements are there for in respect to Adwa facing extinction and whether people are losing interest. Yes, it's facing extinction because, like I said, the quality of the drumming. I was at a funeral and listened to them recently, and there was an elderly woman who came to me and said, "Is that the Yaljune group?" But when we used to listen to them, they had this melodious song and was easy on the ears and it was easy to listen to. So you could actually hear what they were saying and you could actually imbibe the knowledge. And I felt that this sort of aligns with the project that I intend to embark on, because here you have people who are living and going to social programs that these groups are performing and complaining that they are not getting that quality, they are not getting the originality. And I'm sure that if the transcriptions were done, they were recorded, the performers today will look and be able to look at the transcriptions, or the performers tomorrow will look at the transcriptions and be able to perform to the transcription or to the originality of the music, because they will also be composed in, they will also be transcribed in music compositions, which makes it easier to compose the music in terms of its rhythms. And so that's why I think that the issue of extension and the issue of contemporary music versus African music should be taken seriously. And the fact that we need, this is something that I'm putting across. I need support to be able to set the pace for such a project to be done, so that it sets the pace for others who, through my work, will be able to decolonize knowledge across the African continent, which is held in indigenous performances elsewhere. Thank you.
I have a question for our first speaker. First, I'd like to thank both speakers for their talks today. My question will be about the nature of digital humanities. I got the impression that you're piecing together loads of different sources to reconstruct the history of all these individuals. And do you reckon that in general, digital humanities is about basically putting everything together with different sources, different material? And that's something which has never been done before. I guess it's quite a theoretical question. I suppose that's why I'm trying to get at that. Are we using tools which enable us now to put everything together in the same place?
I also have two questions. So the first one is for the first speaker. I would like you to tell us more, if it's possible, on the second volume of your project, of this great project. So if you can tell us a little bit of details on the second edition of this project. And for the second speakers, in the previous panel, we were discussing about the risk. So the first panelist of the last panel was discussing about the risk of remove digital literature from the digital space to the non-digital space. So I was wondering, do you think there are risks in the fact of digitalizing a form of arts that was not meant to be digitalized? Can you develop a little bit on this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions, and really interesting questions, for not just for me but also for the panel. I'm looking forward to hear also the thoughts from my colleague. So yes, I would say the digital humanities related to African diasporas and some maybe part of African history. This part of African history is something really in the core of digital humanities, I would say. If we compare with other themes, the development of very consistent and robust projects in these areas, I don't know, 10 years ago, and now, I would say African diasporas is really on the core. The Transatlantic Slave Trade Database, amazing tool that is here, like online, available for people for do research, has been many years. Professor Paul Lovejoy, I would say he's someone who really in the center of these debates and production, has been many years, and he's developing new projects like the freedom narratives that's also related to biographies. Henry Lovejoy, another very important scholar, he's creating a project called Liberated Africans, also really interesting, and lots of other projects based in Europe, in France, in England, a few ones in Brazil, and lots in US, I would say. So yes, African diasporas and African history is really in the core of digital humanities since the beginning. But I would say the discussions we are having here today is something that's not really on the table when we think much about that. That's the idea of decolonization of knowledge. That's something that we're discussing here. It's really great, and I hope this discussion gets spread for people to think more critically about what they're doing with African history, being done in US, being done in Canada, you know, in the global north. So I think there is still lots to be developed in this sense, in the colonization of knowledge, not really the technical part, etc., but in this area. But I can point out to these two ones, the slave trade database, that's excellent, and everything that Professor Lovejoy is doing, excellent also. The Lovejoys, Henry Lovejoy and Paul Lovejoy. The second edition. So the second edition is something that is making me very excited about. But at the same time, I have all the priorities right now. So it's something that we do slowly. So that's why my PhD dissertation is also late. It's a hard thing to do, and I love to produce art. I'm not an artist. I don't have any talent, but I like to be involved with these things and work with artists. And what I'm doing right now with the artistic advisory board that we have in our committee is thinking about artists in Nigeria, in Cameroon, in Congo, RDC, Senegal. We become like part of groups, like art groups, and we see like talented youth creating really interesting things. And actually, one thing that we are also interested is not really to work with people consolidated, you know, like a very important artists in these countries, but give opportunity and a chance for someone like starting a career, thinking interesting new things to be involved with us and be part of this immersion, you know, and then maybe help someone with an artistic career. So this is our plan. This is still something like starting, but the concept is the same. 5 biographies, 1 artist, 5 scholars in this immersion, and trying to think about biographies in a more diverse sense as possible. People coming from Central West Africa, people coming from East Africa, people coming from North Africa, and being part of the African diasporas in the Ottoman Empire, to China, to Chile, and other parts of the world, you know. So that's why this idea of global Africa is key for us to think about arts. In our case, I think this is the difference between what we are doing and other projects in digital humanities.
Thank you very much, Bruno. I think that your admonition is taken. It's something that I think we need to do more on in terms of working together, collaborating, sharing knowledge, and things like that. Thank you very much for bringing it up. Concerning the issue of what needs to go digital, what aspects of our culture, our history, or our indigenous knowledge needs to go online or not, I'll use an interesting case. 2 years ago, the Asante King spoke at the UN General Assembly. And usually, before he speaks, there's an appellation. The appellation that is sounded to him, like you have 2 men talking in very ancient Asante Twi. You know, for some of us, we even find it difficult to understand because these are very ancient Asante Twi that very few people, even families, are like they are the store of that knowledge. And they speak it and use that as an appellation. Now, there are some people in Ghana who, academics, who sort of translated what was spoken. And this is a sacred Asante history, translated and made it available online. So there was a lot of talk about whether that was necessary or not. But the point is, during the lockdown, we found out that a lot of such was necessary because, of course, the sacredness of our culture and our history will continue to be sacred. There are certain things that will continue to be sacred. And of course, as a researcher, when you are going about research, and informants will tell you about what can be published and what cannot be published. At least we can hold those ones colonized for the time being. They will not be colonized forever, but we can hold them colonized for the time being, so that we can strike a bargain in terms of what we can put out there. Because a lot of the I'm sorry, I think I went off briefly. So I was saying about the availability of more content during the lockdown on our culture and our history, because people needed content, and how people felt that we need a lot more of them, and we need to decolonize a lot more of the history and knowledge that is stored in our culture for consumption of even our children, because now a lot more education is done online because of COVID-19 issues and things like that. So the core is that a lot more of the content needs to go digital to make it available for scholarship. And I think that the parameters would need to be set for the researcher who is doing that, or the transcriber who is doing that, and also where the content is coming from. Because it's also important that at every point, the researcher is able to at least safeguard the integrity of the content that he's getting. So if they cannot be published in the time being, they cannot be published, or they cannot be made available online. Also, I think this issue came up during the Kumasi workshop with regards to works that are put online. Sometimes we don't know where these works are, the sources of such works. And I think that as researchers and the sort of work, and that advice goes to me, and also those like for you, Bruno, as well, and also those who want to engage within the decolonization of knowledge space within Africa, that we need to be able to engage extensively and understand the repercussions of some of the content that we gather going online before we're able to do that. Because as researchers, we have the capacity to be able to decipher whether this has to go online and which doesn't have to go online, and also citing the source. So if there's music that is being played elsewhere, you don't find the Yaojine photo in there, and I mean, as a researcher, putting that information out there, I need to be able to know who are the authors. I need to be able to know some bibliographies about it, and that's what we want to do with this project. So that if it goes online, it's attributed and it's to a source. I think that, and it's for scholarship purposes, for commercial purposes, of course, then some gains have to be made to the people who are original producers of the content. But then for scholarship purposes, the sources need to be clearly stated, so that it addresses the issue of risk, and some, not all of them, of the risk that are inherent in such a process. Thank you.
So I really thank the two speakers of today for joining us. It was very interesting to exchange with you. I hope you will join us also tomorrow for the second day of the conference. I now give the floor to the Director of IFRA to conclude this first day.
We conclude this first day by inviting everyone here for drinks. So sorry for Bruno and your place. I hope we can have a yes.
Send us virtual drinks.
Maybe a coffee for you too early in the morning. But to everyone here who gave a paper, especially to the speakers this morning, please come with us to UI Hotel. I'm going to buy you a drink. That's the least I can do to say thank you. If you don't want to make it, if you're staying at the hostel, the alumni hostel, our bus, a minivan, actually the Institute of African Studies van, will take you back to the hostel. If you can't make it at all, don't worry at all. We're going to see each other tomorrow morning. We start at 8:30. See, as you can tell, it's slightly earlier than today, 8:30. The first part of the day will be devoted to the conference on digital humanities. And since it's our institute's birthday, we're going to have a celebration in a form of beautiful and long speeches. One of them is mine. I know you're all looking forward to it, with the French ambassador and the acting VC of University of Ibadan. So thank you for today, and talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.
Notre monde était un jeu. Mon cœur, je sais qu'elle t'a rendu très malheureux. Tu pleures, pourtant c'est moi qui ai des larmes aux yeux. Mais si tu veux, nous l'oublierons tous les deux. Allez, mon cœur, à quoi bon rallumer des souvenirs? Mon cœur, nous ne la reverrons jamais sourire. Mais le bonheur, avec une autre un jour peut revenir. Quitte à mentir, reparle-moi d'avenir. Toi, mon cœur, fais quelque chose. Je ne tremble pas de froid. Au soleil s'ouvre une rose.